James Harper woke to a pounding headache, the kind that felt like a hammer striking an anvil inside his skull. At 26, he was no stranger to mornings like this, especially on days that carried the weight of old ghosts. The small apartment in Houston's southern suburbs smelled of stale whiskey and regret, remnants of the night before. It was the third anniversary of his ex-girlfriend's death, the woman who had been his anchor in a world that often felt adrift. She'd understood him in ways no one else had, but cancer had taken her too soon, leaving James to navigate a life that seemed hollow without her. He groaned, propping himself up against the headboard, eyes squeezed shut against the dim light filtering through the blinds. The room was a mess of empty bottles and crumpled clothes, a testament to his solitary vigil. James's family, scattered across Texas, had never been close. His mother's passing years earlier had only widened the rifts. Friends had drifted away, consumed by their own lives, leaving him with his job as an HVAC technician at a large furniture corporation. It paid the bills, but the overtime shifts and physical labor left little room for anything else. Just as he considered burying himself back under the covers, a sound pierced the haze, the sizzle of oil in a pan, the clink of dishes. His eyes snapped open. The kitchen was just beyond the thin wall of his one-bedroom unit, and someone was in there. Heart racing, James swung his legs over the side of the bed, checking his clothes, still in yesterday's jeans and t-shirt, wrinkled but intact. He crept toward the door, grabbing a baseball bat from the closet just in case. Peeking around the corner, he froze. In his cramped kitchen stood a woman he recognized but couldn't believe was there. Eleanor Chen, the CEO of the very company he worked for, was calmly flipping eggs in a skillet. She was in her early 40s, tall and poised, dressed in a crisp white button-down shirt and black slacks that screamed executive polish. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, and even without makeup, she exuded an air of quiet authority, the kind that commanded boardrooms and silenced doubters. James had seen her from afar at company events, a figure of admiration and intimidation, the daughter of Asian immigrants who had built an empire from nothing. She turned slightly, noticing him, and offered a small, composed smile. "You remember anything from last night, James?" He lowered the bat, feeling foolish, his face flushing with embarrassment. "Miss Chen? How are you here?" Eleanor poured coffee into 2 mugs, gesturing for him to sit at the small table. "Sit down before you fall over. You look like you need this." James hesitated, then complied, his mind racing. The apartment was tidy. Too tidy. The bottles from last night were gone, the counters wiped clean. He watched as she plated the eggs and toast, setting one in front of him. I don't understand." She sat across from him, sipping her coffee black. "Last night, you were at that dive bar off Main Street, the one with the neon sign that's half burned out. I was there unwinding after a late meeting. Sometimes even CEOs need a break from the glass towers. You were pretty far gone, talking to the bartender about your ex. The anniversary sounded rough." James rubbed his temples. Fragments of memory surfacing, the burn of shots, the blur of faces, spilling his guts to anyone who would listen. "I remember bits. But how did you end up here? You tried to pay your tab and handed me your keys instead. Thought it was your wallet or something. You were in no shape to drive or even call a ride. I figured it was safer to get you home myself. Called a cab, used the keys to get in. Didn't want to leave you alone in that state. You could have choked, or worse." He stared at her, processing. Eleanor Chen, the powerhouse who had turned a small import business into a multi-million-dollar furniture empire, had spent the night in his rundown apartment. "You stayed? All night?" She nodded, unfazed. "Slept on the couch. Figured I'd make breakfast this morning. I'm starving, and your fridge wasn't completely empty. Eggs, bread, coffee. Simple, but it'll help with the hangover. James picked up his fork, the aroma making his stomach rumble despite the nausea. He took a bite, the warmth spreading through him. I don't know what to say. Thank you, I guess. But why? You're my boss. This isn't exactly protocol. Eleanor's expression softened just a fraction, her eyes meeting his with a steady gaze. Because I've been there. Alone, drowning in grief. My parents came over from Taiwan with nothing. I lost my dad young, worked 3 jobs through college. Sometimes a stranger's kindness is all that pulls you through. And you're not just some employee. You've fixed the AC in my office more times than I can count. Reliable. That's rare. He managed a weak smile, the fog in his head lifting slightly. The conversation flowed awkwardly at first. But there was an unexpected ease to it. For the first time in years, James felt seen, not pitied, but understood. As they ate, the morning light grew stronger, casting a warm glow over the table. Eleanor didn't rush to leave, and James found himself not wanting her to. The part ended as they finished their meal, the air between them charged with a tentative connection, hinting at something unforeseen. Eleanor didn't rush to leave after setting the plates down. She sat across from James, her posture relaxed yet composed, as if this unexpected morning in a stranger's kitchen was just another meeting on her calendar. The eggs were perfectly scrambled, golden and fluffy, paired with toasted bread slathered in butter she'd found in his fridge. The coffee steamed between them, its bitter aroma cutting through the lingering haze of last night's excesses. James hesitated for a moment, then picked up his fork again, the simple act of eating grounding him in the surreal scene. They ate in relative silence at first. The only sounds, the clink of utensils, and the distant hum of traffic outside. James glanced at her occasionally, still processing the fact that Eleanor Chen, the woman who oversaw hundreds of employees, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals and appeared in business magazines, was here, in his modest apartment, sharing a meal like it was normal. She caught one of his looks and smiled faintly, breaking the quiet. You know, James, I didn't grow up with mornings like this either, she said, her voice steady and unhurried. My parents immigrated from Taiwan when I was young. We settled in a working-class neighborhood in California, crowded apartments, long hours. I dropped out of high school to help pay the bills, waitressed at diners, sold baked goods at farmers markets on weekends. It was endless shifts, sore feet, and dreaming of something more. James paused mid-bite, surprised by her openness. He'd always imagined her life as one of privilege, built on inherited wealth or easy opportunities. But her words painted a different picture. A young girl scrubbing tables, counting tips in a dimly lit kitchen, pushing through exhaustion to build a future. That sounds tough, he replied, his tone genuine. How did you go from that to, well, running the company? She sipped her coffee, her eyes distant for a moment. Persistence, mostly. I saved every penny, went back to night school, got my degree in business. Started small, importing furniture from overseas, flipping it for profit. One deal led to another, but it wasn't glamorous. There were failures, betrayals from partners who saw me as just an immigrant's daughter. I learned to fight for what I wanted because no one else would. James nodded, feeling a strange kinship. Her story mirrored his own struggles in subtle ways, the grind of manual labor, the isolation of building a life from scraps. Emboldened by her candor, he set his fork down and met her gaze. I get that. These past 3 years, they've been rough. My ex, she was the one person who really got me. We met in high school, stuck together through everything. But when she got sick, it all fell apart. Watching her fade away, knowing I couldn't fix it, it broke something in me. He stared at his plate, the words tumbling out unbidden. I blame myself sometimes. Could have been there more, done more. Now, every anniversary, I end up like last night, drinking to numb it, waking up feeling worse. Work keeps me going, but it's just existing. No real connections anymore. Families distant, friends moved on. It's like I'm stuck in this loop of guilt and loneliness. Eleanor listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful, not pitying. She didn't offer platitudes or quick fixes. Instead, she let the silence stretch, giving his words space to settle. When he finished, she leaned forward slightly. Guilt can be a heavy chain, James. I've carried my share. Regrets over choices I made, climbing the ladder, people I left behind. But holding on to it forever, that's no way to honor the ones we've lost. He looked up, surprised by how her words resonated. For the first time in ages, sharing didn't feel like a burden. It felt like release. The coffee had cooled in their mugs, but neither moved to refill them. Eleanor glanced at the clock on the wall but made no move to stand. You know, today I chose to stay and make breakfast with you. Maybe we both needed something a little different, a reminder that life's not always about pushing through alone. James felt a warmth spread through him, unrelated to the food. Her presence, so unexpected, had cracked open a door he'd long kept shut. As the conversation lingered, she shared a bit more about her own solitude, the late nights in empty offices, the weight of decisions that isolated her from peers. Being at the top doesn't mean you're not lonely, she admitted softly. Sometimes it's the opposite. The morning light shifted, casting longer shadows across the kitchen. Eventually, Eleanor stood, smoothing her shirt. I should get going. Meetings wait for no one. But thank you for letting me crash your morning. It was nice. James rose too, walking her to the door. No, thank you. For everything. I mean it. She paused in the doorway, pulling a business card from her pocket and scribbling her personal number on the back. If you ever want to grab coffee, not the hangover kind, give me a call, no pressure. He took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. I might just do that. With a final nod, she stepped out, leaving James standing in the quiet apartment. The door clicked shut, but the echo of their conversation lingered, a subtle shift in the air. For the first time in 3 years, the day ahead didn't feel quite so empty. After that morning, the card with Eleanor's number sat on James's kitchen table like a quiet invitation. He stared at it for days, debating whether to text her. The idea felt absurd. A mid-20s HVAC tech reaching out to his CEO? But the memory of her listening without judgment lingered, chipping away at his hesitation. Finally, one evening after a grueling shift fixing a warehouse cooling unit, he typed a simple message. Thanks again for the breakfast. Coffee sometime? Her reply came almost immediately. How about this weekend? There's a new spot downtown. That Saturday, they met at a cozy cafe overlooking the bustling streets of Houston. Eleanor arrived in casual jeans and a light sweater, a far cry from her executive attire, but her presence still commanded subtle attention from passers-by. They ordered lattes and talked easily, about work at first, then deeper. She shared stories of her early struggles, the late nights poring over spreadsheets in a tiny apartment, the skepticism she'd faced as an Asian American woman in a male-dominated industry. People assumed I got lucky, she said, stirring her drink. But luck doesn't build empires. Grit does. James opened up more, too, admitting how his job, while steady, often left him feeling invisible. It's just fixing things that break, he said. No one notices until something goes wrong. Eleanor leaned in. But that's what matters. Being there when it counts. Like you were for that system today. From there, the texts became routine. Eaten? Breakfast yet? She'd ask on weekdays. Farmer's market this Sunday? Or new coffee blend at my favorite roaster. Want to try? James, initially cautious about the age gap and their professional divide, found himself anticipating her messages. They weren't dates exactly, just shared moments that chipped away at his isolation. One afternoon, Eleanor showed up at his door unannounced, carrying a bag of fresh pastries and fruit. "Thought you might need a break," she said with a grin. She didn't flinch at the modest surroundings or the curious glances from neighbors peeking through curtains. They sat on his small balcony, watching the sun dip low over the suburbs, talking about everything from favorite books to the pressures of her role. "Board meetings can be brutal," she confessed. "Everyone wants a piece of you, but no one sees the toll." Inspired by her encouragement, James started making changes. He cut back on drinking, limiting it to social occasions rather than solitary nights. His apartment transformed. Clutter cleared, shelves organized, even a few plants added for life. He enrolled in an online certification course for advanced HVAC systems, something he'd put off for years. "You're capable of more," Eleanor told him during one visit. "Don't let grief define your limits." As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened. James mustered the courage to invite her to a coworker's birthday party at a local bar. He half expected her to decline, but she accepted without hesitation. That night, she arrived in a simple dress, blending in yet standing out with her effortless poise. When they entered together, heads turned. James introduced her as a friend, but as the evening wore on, she slipped her hand into his during a group toast. The warmth of her touch sent a jolt through him, grounding and electric. Later, when a tipsy colleague teased them, "Didn't know you had a thing for executives, James," Eleanor laughed it off smoothly. "If he's embarrassed, I'll just have to help him get used to it." Her confidence buoyed him, turning potential awkwardness into light-hearted banter. By the end of the night, James felt a spark he hadn't known in years. Not just attraction, but a sense of partnership. But whispers began to circulate. At work, James overheard snippets in the break room. "You see him with the boss? Must be climbing the ladder the easy way." Neighbors gossiped over fences. "That older woman visiting? What's a CEO doing in a place like this?" The comments stung, highlighting the chasm between their worlds, his blue-collar routine versus her high-stakes corporate life. Eleanor brushed it off when he mentioned it. "People talk because they're bored or envious. It doesn't change us." Still, the pressure mounted, subtly. One evening, as James scrolled through his phone after a long day, a call came from his sister in Dallas. Her voice was laced with concern, or what passed for it in their family. "Heard you're seeing someone older from work?" "James, think about this. Find a girl your age, someone normal. Don't complicate things with class differences. You know how that ends." He ended the call politely but firmly, her words echoing in his mind. Staring at a new text from Eleanor. "Up for a walk tomorrow?" He felt a tug of doubt. Was this sustainable? Or was he setting himself up for more loss? The night stretched on, leaving him to wrestle with the growing attachment and the shadows of external judgment. The rumors spread like smoke through the vents James knew so well, subtle at first, then inescapable. In the break room at work, he caught fragments of conversations that made his stomach twist. "Harper's punching way above his weight, huh? Must be after her money." Or worse, "CEO slumming it with a tech? That's got to be a midlife crisis." The words stung, painting him as an opportunist, a gold digger exploiting the age gap and power imbalance. He tried to ignore them, focusing on his tools and tasks, but the whispers followed him through the warehouse halls. Eleanor faced her own battles. During a tense board meeting, one of the older executives pulled her aside afterward, his voice low and patronizing. "Eleanor, we're hearing things about you and that technician. It's not a good look for the company, fraternizing with staff. Investors might question your judgment." She held her ground, her response measured. "My personal life is just that. Personal. As long as it doesn't affect operations, it's none of the board's concern." But the pressure lingered, a shadow over her decisions, reminding her of the scrutiny she'd always endured as a woman at the top. James's family weighed in too, their calls infrequent but pointed. His aunt from Austin rang one evening, her tone laced with disapproval. "Boy, I hear you're seeing some older lady from work. CEO or not, that's trouble. Find yourself a nice girl. Your age. Someone from the neighborhood. Don't get mixed up in that high society mess. It never ends well for folks like us. He brushed it off with vague assurances, but the words echoed his sister's earlier warning, stirring old insecurities about class and belonging. That night, under the soft glow of string lights on his balcony, Eleanor sat beside him, a glass of water in hand. The Houston skyline twinkled in the distance, but the air between them felt heavy. She'd come over after a long day, sensing his unease through their texts. "James," she said quietly, turning to face him, "I've noticed you've been distant. If the gossip is getting to you, or the stares, tell me. I don't want to be the reason you pull away. I've lived through enough judgment to know it can wear anyone down." He stared at the railing, his fingers tracing the wood grain. The words hit close, dredging up memories of his ex-girlfriend. They'd been young, full of plans, but when her family disapproved, citing his background, his lack of prospects, he'd wavered. He'd let their pressure erode his resolve, pulling back just enough to create cracks that time couldn't mend. By the time she got sick, the damage was done. He'd failed her by not fighting harder. "It's not you," he admitted finally. "It's me. Remembering how I let someone down before. Because I wasn't strong enough to stand up to the noise." Eleanor reached for his hand, her touch warm and steady. "You're not that person anymore, but if this is too much, if you need space, I'll understand. I won't force you to choose between me and your peace." The vulnerability in her voice cracked something in him. She, who commanded rooms and built fortunes, was offering him an out, not out of weakness, but respect. He squeezed her hand, the city lights blurring as emotion welled up. They sat in silence for a while, the night breeze carrying the faint hum of traffic below. When she left later, kissing his cheek softly, James lay awake, replaying her words. The next morning, before dawn broke, he grabbed his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen, then typed, "If you're not afraid of the rumors, then neither am I." He hit send, heart pounding. Eleanor's reply came as the sun rose. "Meet me at the office entrance. We'll walk in together." He arrived early, nerves buzzing like faulty wiring. Eleanor was waiting, dressed in a sharp blazer and slacks, her expression calm but determined. Without a word, she slipped her hand into his. They stepped through the doors side by side, the lobby's fluorescent lights casting long shadows. Heads turned, receptionists paused mid-conversation, colleagues whispered behind coffee cups. James felt the weight of every stare, the judgments unspoken but palpable. The young black tech with the older Asian CEO, a mismatch in every societal script. In the elevator, a group of managers fell silent as they entered. One cleared his throat awkwardly. "Morning, Ms. Chen." Eleanor nodded politely, her grip on James's hand firm. When they reached the warehouse floor, more eyes followed, the same ones that had gossiped days before. A burly supervisor smirked, muttering just loud enough, "Guess the rumors are true." Eleanor stopped, turning to address the small crowd that had gathered subtly. Her voice carried with quiet authority. "If anyone has questions about my personal life, ask now. Otherwise, let's focus on work." The room shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Then, looking at James, she added softly, "Thank you for choosing me, not just once, but every day." He met her eyes, a surge of resolve washing over him. For the first time, facing the scrutiny didn't feel like defeat. It felt like victory. As they walked on, hand in hand, the whispers faded behind them, replaced by the hum of machinery and the promise of standing together against whatever came next. From that bold walk through the office doors, James and Eleanor stopped hiding. They didn't flaunt their relationship with grand gestures or public declarations. Instead, they wove it into the fabric of everyday life, letting actions speak louder than words. Whispers at work faded over time. replaced by reluctant acceptance as colleagues saw Eleanor's focus remain sharp and James's reliability unchanged. The board, after a few pointed emails, backed off when quarterly profits soared under her leadership. James, for his part, threw himself into his certification course, earning a promotion to lead technician, a quiet validation that silenced some of the doubters. Their days settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings began early, with Eleanor often arriving at James's apartment before dawn. They'd rise together, brewing coffee in the dim kitchen light, the aroma filling the space as they prepared simple meals, oatmeal with fresh fruit from the market, or smoothies blended with greens from the small herb garden they'd started on the balcony. James took up jogging, and Eleanor joined him on weekends, their footsteps sinking along the suburban paths under the Texas sun. "You're getting faster," she'd tease, her breath steady despite the pace. He'd laugh, feeling lighter than he had in years. James adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Max, who bounded around the apartment with endless energy. Max became their shared joy. Walks in the park turned into playful chases, and evenings on the couch with the pup curled between them fostered a sense of home. Eleanor, inspired by the neighborhood's quiet community, began hosting informal yoga sessions for local women in the building's common area. "It's good for the mind," she'd say, guiding them through poses with the same poise she brought to boardrooms. James would watch from the sidelines sometimes, admiring how she turned her strength into something nurturing. Weekends brought family dinners at James's place, a tradition that started tentatively but grew roots. Eleanor would arrive with groceries, insisting on helping in the kitchen. The first time, his sister and aunt showed up with guarded expressions, small talk, stiff over plates of grilled chicken and salad. "So, you're the one we've heard about," his sister said, eyeing Eleanor across the table. But as the meal progressed, barriers softened. Eleanor shared stories of her immigrant roots, laughing about her early kitchen disasters, and soon the room filled with genuine chatter. His aunt even asked for yoga tips, and by dessert the tension had dissolved into easy conversation. Over time, the gatherings became warmer. Laughter echoed through the apartment as they swapped recipes or debated local news. James's family, once distant, began to thaw. His sister sent occasional texts checking in, and his aunt dropped by with homemade pies. "Didn't expect this," James admitted one night after everyone left, as he and Eleanor cleared the table. She smiled, stacking plates. "People surprise you when you give them a chance." One crisp morning, months into their shared life, Eleanor stood at the counter, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. The sun was just cresting the horizon, painting the kitchen in soft gold. Max snoozed at their feet, the balcony garden blooming with herbs and tomatoes they'd planted together. She handed James his cup, her eyes thoughtful. "If I hadn't stayed that first night," she said quietly, "do you think your life would be different?" He set the mug down, stepping behind her to wrap his arms around her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder, the familiar scent of her shampoo grounding him. "If you hadn't stayed," he murmured, his voice warm against her ear, "I don't think I'd have ever really woken up." She turned in his embrace, her hands resting on his chest, a soft smile breaking through. They stood like that, the world outside awakening as birds chirped and traffic hummed to life. Max stirred, tail wagging, and they both laughed, bending to pet him. The moment captured their essence, simple, unhurried, built on choices rather than chance. As the day unfolded, they stepped onto the balcony together, coffees in hand overlooking Houston's sprawling skyline under the rising sun. Max scampered between their legs, barking at a passing squirrel. James pulled Eleanor close, her head leaning against his shoulder. The city buzzed below, full of its judgments and rhythms. But up here, they had carved out a space of their own, peaceful, resilient, and deeply connected. In the face of lingering whispers and societal sidelong glances, they chose each other every day, turning an unexpected morning into a lifetime of quiet strength and shared beginnings.